Ladies and gentlemen, I fear I may need to activate hater mode. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Hey, another fun fact, the pencil just hit the floor. The pencil just hit the floor. You know what that is a metaphor, an analogy for? It's how I feel about this chapter. I'm so mixed. I'm so mixed, bro. I'm so mixed. This is definitely like the reveal of this chapter is not surprising. It's not even really disappointing. It's not even like, and notably, I was going to like look at the Reddit. I was gonna look at the Reddit and see what the comments opinions of this are. I was gonna check out Igni. I was gonna leap all about creation and be like, let me see what the comment thoughts on this. But I do want to give my honest thoughts on influence, and I want y'all to try and influence me in another direction if y'all feel a different way. And I won't even talk about it too much until we get to it. But let me just say, I'm super mixed on this chapter. It does a thing that I like, but it's a thing that I like with honestly, I don't think I like this chapter that much. I actually don't think I don't. But once again, that's my initial thoughts. Let's actually break down and get through the chapter itself, and I'll explain my very, very, very mixed feelings. But before we hop right into chapter 192 of which is known as the Rule Breaker, let's talk about this color cover page. It's a very, very nice one. It shows Gawain's family. Notably, family does seem to be one of the overarching themes of Four Knights. Definitely in a much more way. Well, I mean, like the whole original conflict of Seven Deadly Sins is actually kind of based around family. So I guess it's kind of continuing the Seven Deadly Sins trend, right? Because Meliodas and Elizabeth were only in their predicament because of their family and their lineages and their heritage. But that was much more like a fate of the world, high scale, royal family, top of the line stuff. But Four Knights is really about family and your relations to it and how you feel about it and the truth of your family versus the hidden truth of your family. So it does make sense that Gawain would definitely play into that a lot, because think about it, with Percival, while he doesn't have a mother figure to conflict over, his grandfather is his biggest motivation, and so is his not father. Both technically are the case. That's not his grandfather, and that's not his not father. We don't know what original family, what poor kingdom he was actually supposed to be from, or at least his vessel was supposed to be from. But Percy's whole story is heavily based in family. Tristan is family personified, essentially, not only because he's the character who is the child of the two main characters of the previous series, but also literally because, shock horror, the man is half demon, half goddess. His insides are literally fighting to destroy each other every single day, and he has to go through that conflict and the history of his family and the blood feud that literally exists inside of him. And obviously he has his own mixed feelings about his father, his own mixed feelings about his mother, how he doesn't measure up to them. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff up in the air and all thick and juicy and vague about all that. Then Lancelot, he has an interesting relationship with his family because it's more so his found family, right? Like, he has a healthy relationship with both his parents. He was a little bit more questionable in the one shot. He clearly loved Elaine, but like he was very mad at his father all the time because he thought his father was a lazy bum. But that seemingly faded, or at least we haven't touched on that much at all in the main Four Knights manga. And also, Lance's main motivation is Jericho. You know, his aunt, his mentor, his master, who essentially was there with him ever since he popped out his mama, and has been around forever. She's like an auntie, and thusly, that's his main motivation. Despite how weird Jericho had to make it, because of course Jericho had to make it weird, because Jericho just has to be weird. You make the finest character in the entire manga an absolute weirdo. Not gonna thank you, I appreciate that. And then, naturally, we have Gawain. And she has the whole question of her heritage, her lineage, who her real parents are, why she feels the way she does, why she only likes women, why she only has good taste. Tall women, for the win. But with that being the case, it makes sense that the cover page is about family, especially considering the family that is revealed. And notably, Gawain does have family here. Both of her parents are in this shot, apparently. I said I wasn't going to talk about it until the actual reveal happens, so I'm going to hold back on talking about it. But her actual parents are in the shot. Hey, look at that. That's the Lion Son of Pride. Hey, look at that. That's the Boar Son of Gluttony. Hey, look at that. It's Hawk. I genuinely don't know. Is anyone else going crazy? Is anyone else going crazy? Like, I feel like it's like every 10, 15 chapters or so, there will be something heavily Hawk related. Like, it'll literally just be him, right? It won't even be subtle. It'll just be Hawk, but not Hawk. Like, the last one we had was Hawk being at the center of that purgatory diagram. Remember back when turret, no, not turret, Rothus was fighting, and we saw that purgatory diagram, like the inside of purgatory. We saw Hawk right there in the middle. That was Hawk again. And then, of course, we had the guy who had the Hawk helmet, and we see Hawk memorabilia all about. Like, we keep seeing allusions to Hawk, but we don't see the big, beefy, porky king himself. And that's crazy. Like, that shouldn't bother me, but it bothers me because I feel like I'm being messed with. I feel like I'm being messed with. Obviously, if you didn't read Seven Deadly Sins, you have no connection to that thing. It's like, whatever, this weird pig thing keeps showing up. I guess it's a reference to the first series. And it is. It's a reference to the mascot of the first series. And notably, now I have to say it, with our glorious, juicy, legendary, scrumptious, thick goat Sylvan gone, Four Knights doesn't really have a mascot equivalent when you think about it. Like, hell. Like it literally doesn't. Hawk was the mascot of the original series, and Four Knights just doesn't have one. So it is interesting that the original series mascot keeps showing up in these super, like, vague, minor ways. I don't know. Am I the only one who's tweaking out over that? Probably. But still, Hawk is here. But the parents are here. Look at the symbols. And then you have Dubs, who essentially does seem to play like an uncle-esque role to Gawain. Very interesting, too, especially considering we just didn't have much of him in Cursed by Light. He didn't really get too much time to establish himself as a character. We just knew him as the great craftsman. But we'll see later on this very chapter that he does deeply care for Gawain. So I would say, in a similar vein to how Jericho played the auntie role for Lancelot before she got a little freaky, I would say that Dubs plays the uncle role for Gawain and is deeply cared about her and her safety. And naturally, we have Kay, the brother and original heir to Camelot, Kay Pendragon, and his direct care for his daughter, Gawain, though he readily admits that's his foster daughter, not his actual daughter. So overall, this is a nice little family unit. And in comparison, well, actually, no, because really, it's only Percy. Percy's the only one. So realistically, that does make Percy the exception in a variety of ways. Not just because he's the main character, but also because his family unit is the only one that has, like, direct, consistent conflict. Because notably, every other major character has positive ties with their parents. Like, Anne and her dad were on different terms of her being married, but, like, she still loved her dad still loved her, and her mom seemingly just passed away. Once again, I'm not sure if we're ever going to follow up on that Anne mom plotline. I'm assuming we are, just eventually. We're in Camelot. We'll follow up on that eventually. Donnie, his mom's dead. So there's that. And we don't know his dad. So, like, Donnie, he's one of the few characters to completely just, completely sidestep and scapegoat the whole family connection for Four Knights. Isolde, we just know she comes from, the non-noble side of everything, but we don't actually know much about her family. If anything, I don't think we've ever seen either of her parents. Kion, we know, Margaret and Gilthunder, and there's obviously parental conflict there just because of how they treated him, and how it was Tristan who essentially had to step up and be the parent for them and risk everything for Kion when they wouldn't, with the whole Vivian situation, and obviously, you have that toxic family unit. Oh! Sorry, there was a fly. And, yeah, I think, but notably, Kion still does love his parents, and his parents still love him. A little too much, a little overprotective. For good reason, admittedly. But Tristan's parents love him, and he loves his parents. He loves his mom and dad. Lance loves his mom and dad. So it really is just Percy as a negative lineup, because Gawain loves her father, even if it did seem Kay was a little strict at first. I got completely different vibes than what I get now from these two. I thought Kay was, like, a little bit rougher and stricter. Ah! Sorry, it's still flying around. But Gawain, I thought Kay was a lot rougher and stricter, but similarly, that was just, Gawain being nervous and awkward. And then, of course, she loves her grandparents, and they love her. Or grandparents. and Dubs cares for Gawain, and Gawain seems to care for Dubs. So overall, this is another healthy family unit, which is very nice to see. But of course, this is a nice, beautiful little color page. And notably, this is one of the rare cases where I don't really have any complaints about any of the colorations. Like, typically, whenever Nagaba does a color page, I'm like, hey, Nagaba, this color is ugly. But notably, especially knowing who this guy is, that green is very sensible. Admittedly, I'm kind of shocked there isn't more of a deep reference in this color. Like, you'd think it'd be more associated with Merlin's colors. But no, while the Fat Belly Dinosaur Head Grandfather is a direct rip of Escanor's old outfit, this Merlin outfit has no basis, strangely enough, which I'm not sure if it's meant to imply something. But I like Dubs' coloration. It matches Cursed by Light. Kay's coloration is just fine. The pink is a little bit strange. It matches the background, so that's fine. And obviously, Gawain's fit is just Escanor's old fit. Merged with, not even merged with, it's literally just Escanor's old fit. Like, verbatim, I'm pretty sure. And it is kind of funny, because, well, actually, it's Escanor's fit and Merlin's fit. Like, the top is Merlin, the bottom is Escanor, and the puffs are both of them, actually, because I'm remembering Escanor and Merlin both had the puffy, spiky collar by EOS, Seven Deadly Sins. But, with it being the case, let's not waste more time. Let's hop right into chapter 192, The Rule Breaker. We open up, and we do get to see Hawk. Again, I promise I'm not crazy. I'm telling you, Naka's messing with me. And us. I'm saying us because I don't want to appear crazy. Be like, why are you so focused on the Hawk member? Really? Why is he on this ship? That's not just a random board. That's Hawk. Gosh darn it! Nakama, stop messing with me. Where is he? Where's his brother? Like, I want to know. Where are they? I know they showed up at the end of Curse, but like, did they go back to Purgatory? How? When? Where are they now? Where are they? He has visitation rights on Tristan, gosh darn it. He might as well be an uncle to them kids. Let's see. So, and obviously this is revealing that Dubs, after being freed and saved by Gother, did actually manage to get back to Kay's ship, which is presumably still either hovering right around the edges or is still in Onflame, just not being detected or anything. But he decides to drop a little bit of lore. So, Beryl Treep, 4 Evils member and commissioner of the Gladiator Festival, is actually Escanor's brother, Damon. And now Gawain's part of that event too. It's really fate at work, don't you think? And at first, in the live reaction, which is about 20 minutes, you can check that out over on Patreon for as low as $1 a month. You can remember for as low as $3 a month to check out the live reactions. They do a live reaction for every single chapter 4 nights. But with being the case, in the live reaction, this flew right over my head because I was kind of hoping for something different than what we ended up getting. But obviously, there's a reason that he just says Escanor's brother, as if Escanor was in the room. As if Escanor was in the room. Right? Like, he doesn't say Lion Sin of Pride Escanor. He just says Escanor. Like he knows the guy. And talks with him. On a consistent basis. Intriguing. Very intriguing. I wonder why. But with it being the case, Dubs does point out the kind of dramatic irony of it all, right? You know, 2 brothers, lost to time, lost to separation, lost to different kingdoms, are now reunited under a different context. Of course, it's the legacy of Escanor. And a transformed and mutated, shifted and changed Damon. But we see that as Dubs cops a squat and chills out, he says, "It kinda concerns me. Gawain is a pretty delicate child, despite it all." Once again, showing that Dubs does have genuine care for Gawain. It's hard to tell with Dubs. Dubs is a pretty nonchalant person. Like if you want to be a nonchalant dreadhead, just copy Dubs 1-to-1. You will match it absolutely. With it being the case, he does actually really care for Gawain. Sure, he has his moments of seemingly being tired of her, being a little bit annoyed with her shenanigans and her mess. But still, he cares for her. To the point where he's concerned about her safety. And he genuinely considers Gawain a delicate child. And of course, she still is. She was very sheltered. She lived the majority of her life alone. And when she finally broke out of everything and was in the world, it didn't last for too long. Remember, all of part 1 takes place over less than like a month? Or like a little over a month. Part 1 is not that long. So, and Gawain was even part of part 1 for like 2 weeks. She was in Leonis, which was mostly a day, then an extra day there, went to Walnock, Jay died, and then they went to the demon world, and then boom. Part 1 was over. So, like, she had very little time to actually experience the world, experience having friends. So, of course, she is a delicate, sheltered child, and Dubs is generally concerned for her. Once again, I do like. Curse by Light did a fine enough job trying to characterize Dubs with, like, the 50 million things that movie also had to do. Had a bunch of other characters to characterize, had a bunch of arcs to wrap up, had to introduce and execute the Supreme Deity all in the same movie. Like, it had to do a whole bunch. So, Dubs didn't actually get too much time here. And ultimately, I am really liking his Four Knights characterization. One of the characters that Nakama created that was initially, like, whatever, was mostly indifferent to. He's now becoming not one of my favorites, but he's definitely up there in the catalog. And we see that Kay says, very true. She's extremely pompous and rude, but she's also very pure and open-minded. She truly does resemble her parents. Her parents. Do you hear me? Her parents. Are her parents in the room right now? Her parents. Which does imply that the long-held theory that Gawain was a test tube baby is still, at least not impossible, because once again, she just doesn't understand how she was birthed. But then again, I also don't remember being birthed. I remember nothing. Admittedly, my memory just sucks. So, does anyone remember being birthed? Is that a thing? How good is some of y'all's memory? I do not remember being birthed. I know some people who remember, like, being 1. I don't know. I didn't gain consciousness till, like, age 4 or 5. I just remember waking up on the stairs one day. Like, literally, at the bottom of my old family home steps, I was just on the stairs, bottom of the stairs, so just chilling there. I was like, I am. How does it go? I think, therefore I am. I thought, and therefore I was. I was no longer being governed by instinct. I actually did have rational thought for the first time. I was like, I exist. And that's my earliest memory. Then, like, my next earliest memory is getting hit over the head by a toy train. But that's another story for another time. If I can remember that story even properly. Who knows? My memory really sucks. But with being the case, I remember being birthed. So maybe the case that she literally was, like, conceived and stuff like that. Which is kind of weird. We'll see. And we see the case as Grandpa, my time as the child's guardian is over. From now on, it's up to Gawain to choose her way of life. Which is true. And notably, I think a big difference between Four Knights and Seven Deadly Sins, and why I think Four Knights is definitely more approachable to people, and why if someone, especially someone who didn't like Seven Deadly Sins, says, hey, Pencil, should I read Four Knights? I'd be like, yeah. Because while the stories do have some overlapping themes, like the themes of family, the themes of connection, the themes of friendship, it is just a different story. Truly, Four Knights is a coming-of-age story. Which I cannot say Seven Deadly Sins is. Even for the characters who were childish, quote-unquote, such as Diane and King and Gother, even Bond to a certain degrees in some ways. Seven Deadly Sins is the farthest thing from a coming-of-age story that I could really talk about. Like not really. Like, you can squint real hard to, like, fit the Demon King, Supreme Deity plot into, like, a whole coming-of-age and breaking away from your parents thing, but, like, it's so far from it. Meanwhile, Four Knights is definitely a coming-of-age story for all of our characters, because our characters are actually children growing up into adults. They're all now 18, but still, heck, I can speak from experience. While I had a plan at 18, I didn't have a perfect plan. Heck, I'm older now and I still don't have a perfect plan. So, it is a case where technically, yeah, Kay's job is done. His daughter has hit adulthood. But also, there's extra reasoning on top of why he needs to, like, go and choose her own way of life. I'm sorry. Once again, I'm literally, as I record and talk about the review and I review, I'm straight thinking about how I feel about this chapter overall. But with it being the case, we see that Kay says she's 18 years old now. Isn't it time to tell her the truth? And we see Gawain smiling and blazing up, realizing that she's figured out the truth behind Balin, as the Furlan, fake Merlin, and Fescanor, fake Escanor, pose up and mew aggressively. I don't know how hard you can mew as a dragon skeleton and a wooden puppet, but all they're mewing. And Gawain will go on to mew later on this very chapter. Or essentially, she tries to maul Balin. And I thought Balin was the massive maugre, but Gawain decides to maul even harder. But we see Gawain is smiling and cheesing as she's finally figured out the truth. Not the truth of her lineage, but the truth of Balin. And we see that everyone goes crazy. As Capellini declares, a shockwave rushes across the crowd. Balin, reigning champion, has been damaged for the first time. She actually managed to tickle his toes. And we see Balin. Yo, any of y'all got the Balin build? Would y'all recommend the Balin? Honestly, like, that's the thing. I kind of don't want to be that beefy. Is that weird? Like, notably, it's not something that would ever happen. Like I could work out. I could continue working out as I do every single day for like 10 years. I still wouldn't look like Balin. But like, I feel like it gets like the muscles get to a point where they get in the way. Like I want to be built, but I also still want to be lean. Like Balin ain't even lean. He's lean, but so bulked up, bro. Like he has a legendary build though. Like look at those abs, bro. Even though they're literally sizzling, you could still grind cheese on those things. You could grind meat on those things. You could literally make pork chops on those bad boys. But with that being the case, he says, "Well, little lady, you truly amaze me," as his abs are sizzling. I need abs bad, bro. Like, man, gee. And we see Gawain still sweating, still a little bit nervous, but smiling now. She finally feels like she figured out the weakness. Alright, for everyone who was like, well, no, it can't be that simple. What you think the weakness was? I made last week's poll talking about the weakness, because I was like, it's obvious what the weakness is. He can't block physical and magic at the same time. I saw people still being like, well, we don't know for sure. What? like context clues, people. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not the sharp in the kitchen. Come on. We knew what it was. If that was the case, we knew what it was. Unfortunately, while we knew what it was, unfortunately, I can confidently say your boy was wrong about Balin. I don't think he's a fraud, but like, he's in a real rough spot. As we see Gawain smiles, and everyone, I guess, is just a little bit like things ain't clicking. I guess they aren't thinking too straight, because we see Anne say, but why now? Fire didn't hurt him before. And Ossian goes on to say, was that strong enough to override his annulment? And Donnie's like, and we see that Pelio says, it makes no sense. If this was the case, then your breakthrough certainly would have damaged him. And no, it wouldn't. Unless I'm mistaken, unless Hauser got massively stronger with a 2-year time skip, he's still Matrona level. He's fodder. He's fodder. What do you mean? You want to put Gawain and Hauser on the same tier? No. I'm gonna talk about later on in this very video. I'm gonna talk about high tiers, top tiers, mid tiers, and bottom tiers. But like, Hauser is a bottom tier character still. So are you, Pelio. Like any of the pure human, like I'd say Anne's bottom tier too. Very low bottom tier too. Really, Donnie still down there as well. Like these characters just aren't that strong. So no, just because breakthrough didn't work does not mean that a casual attack from Gawain doesn't casually slam How's the strongest attack. Come on now. Let's be real. But with it being the case, Gawain decides to explain the plot a little bit to get everyone caught up. Balin! For the first time, I do find it funny how as Balin's holding his cinched abs, Nakaba, I'm guessing, drew an extra line here as if to imply Balin was talking, but no, this is all Gawain. But Balin, for the first time you moved to block my fist, infused with explosive flame. Then, for the first time, you were burned by my flame-infused sword. Obviously, a physical attack imbued with a magic attack, and another physical attack imbued with a magic attack. And we see as she blazes up, she begins to explain even further. When your sword was cut off by my left arm. Which is a weird way to phrase that. I think she should have said, when your sword is stuck in my left arm. I'm not sure how, like, if these are the official translations, that's a weird way to phrase it, but still, it's fine. But when your sword was cut off by my left arm, you had two options. Either take the flame away, or take the sword away. And then, obviously, everyone, they're slowly they're on the up and up. Wait a minute, two options? Wait. Then, fearing a potentially lethal slash, you opted to cancel out the physical attack. That exposed you to the flame, hurting you. And then Tristan and Percival realize in the instant, that's it! In short, you can instantly switch between canceling out magic or physical attacks, depending on what your opponent does. That's the truth behind Invincible. Almighty, but not at the same time. Whoa, what have we here? So that's how Invincible works. And Balin does readily admit, you caught that in our first fight. Amazing. And no, she didn't. She figured it out just now. But, with it being the case, let's talk about it. I just mentioned I was going to talk about low tiers, high tiers, top tiers, mid tiers. I don't think this makes Balin a fraud. I don't. But he does get washed by every mid tier higher. Well, once again, it really depends. How strong do you think Gawain is, right? Because Balin is still able to damage Gawain. That's the big thing, right? Balin's output is still high enough. And notably, while he does need to switch between blocking physical and blocking magic, that's still a pretty, at least so far, it's not a no limits immunity. Like, obviously, he'd still be wiped by a powerful enough attack, presumably. But, like, it's not like he has a hard limit on either, right? So maybe Meliodas could punch him at full strength, and as long as he's not infusing any magic into his fist, Balin can still tank it. And same thing if you were to, Meliodas were to hit him with, like, true magic levels, it'll hit him with Erasure, right? Like, maybe that still wouldn't do anything, as long as he has his magic guard up. But his stats are still definitely in that high tier, I'd say. Once again, assuming Gawain just scales above Chaos Commandments, especially at this point, after she was able to rival the Testament Beast. The Testament Beast was fused up of characters who didn't match the 10 Commandments as a group, but then fuse them all together. They have to at least be Commandment level at a low ball. You can definitely argue they're even Archangel tier, or at least like low Archangel tier, the Testament Beast in particular, and Gawain's able to damage and harm that 2 years prior. Then she's gotten massively stronger since then, more spells, more ability, more charge up time, and Balin still is able to damage her even in her strongest state with his more physical stats. So Balin's not far. I've seen people already leap to the heavens and be like, Balin's a fraud, Balin's low tier, he's not. Because he still has the AP to do crazy damage to what is admittedly a basic high tier, right? Because I'd say if I had to give my general estimate, and hey, feel free to say anything different. I'm more than happy to read and so on the comments and change my own opinion. But in my opinion, the god tiers of the verse are the Chaos family, aka your Chaos King Arthur, your Chaos itself, Cap. Then you have the top tiers of the verse, aka your deity tiers, and anyone who scales to them, such as the Sins. So you have the Supreme Deity, you have the Demon King, you have Diane. Well, Diane's really weird, but like we'll throw her in there because it's commonly agreed she scales to them. So Diane, King, Mel, Bon, Meliodas. I'm not saying they're all at all in the same tier, or like you could definitely make a tier gap between Meliodas and like the rest of the Sins, or Meliodas and Bon and the rest of the Sins, or Meliodas. Well, not really King. You can't really put them out there with those two. But, like, you can definitely make a tier gap between them. But once again, just the top tiers are the Sins, plus Lance, plus the deities, such as King, or such as the Demon King and Supreme Deity. Then, I'd say the high tiers are where you get your Archangel tier fighters. Is that true? Yeah, I'd say your Archangel tier fighters and your mostly 4 Knights candidates. Once again, it's kind of debatable where Gawain and where Gawain and Percy and Tristan scale right now. It is pretty vague. But I'd say they're pretty much all somewhat relative, and they're all in that high Archangel tier. They're all clearly above Commandment tier. Like, we see this when they fight the Chaos Commandments, who, at least according to Gallon, are stronger than their base variations. That was 2 years ago, so they're definitely high tiers. I don't think any of them are Sin level yet. Lance still seems to be in that echelon all to himself. And I'd say, at this point, with all having the Chaos buffs, the 4 Evils are, like, in that weird mid-spot between high tier and top tier, with Beltree possibly being in the top tier, being a threat to the Sins and stuff like that. And then I'd probably place Balin around there, in that, like, high tier not really top tier, because he's able to damage Gawain, who should have, like, high tier, not really top tier level stats and durability. And thusly, to say Balin's, like, a low tier or a mid tier just doesn't make sense. To put him in the same league as someone like Hauser, no. Nowhere near. Put him in the same league as any, like, the regular Giants, no. Common Demons, no. I think Balin does kind of violate the commandments, even if many commandments and many mid tiers or even low tiers and above, like, I'd say Hauser's a low tier character, he should have the ability to infuse magic into his weapons. The fact that he doesn't is kind of weird. But we know Gilthunder does. Thank you. I completely forgot about Gilthunder last video. But, like, a bunch of characters from the low tier to the god tiers all can do the whole magic infusion thing. So, a majority of the verse can damage Balin if they bend him over properly. But Balin still does have enough raw stats and durability and offensive power that I don't think he's suddenly fodder. I would just solidly put him in the high tier. I think he violates pretty much all the commandments except for, like, Zeldris and stuff like that. And possibly other high tier commandments. Really, like Zeldris and Prime and Bell. Once again, the commandments kind of get cliffed badly because of the scaling of Gawain and stuff like that. But I put him, like, right there. He probably still loses to someone like Ludishel, who can definitely infuse. Tarmiel and Sariel are weird because they don't wield weapons, but they could infuse, like, their grace into their bodies and then attack, which would probably still harm Balin. And once again, Balin just doesn't have a way to really put them down. So I definitely say Balin's, like, below Archangel tier. Because he doesn't really have any win cons against them. Like how does Balin beat Tarmiel? He just doesn't. He literally just couldn't beat Tarmiel. And if Balin gets banished to, like, the domain of God, like he just gets cooked. So he's definitely below Archangel tier. Just because of, like, the matchup and the stats. But still, he's not fodder. He's not fodder, alright? Like, Archangel tier, as much as I clown on the Archangels, especially Mael, it's not out of malice. They're still powerful. And Balin's probably in that tier just because of his stats. But with it being the case, Balin, he got massively nerfed. But the one thing I'll say, with this massive nerf to Balin, he's balanced now. He's very balanced. As obviously all of our major antagonists that we're going to be fighting from this point will have the ability to infuse magic into their attacks. That's just naturally. Magic into physical attacks, physical into magic attacks. That's going to be just a common thing from this point on. Naturally. It gives you a 10 times boost. It's basically necessary to be a meta-relevant threat. So, I think Balin is now balanced enough that he could join the crew. That was my one hesitation with Balin winning this fight and being really truly invincible or needing something extra fancy to damage him. Oh no, could he not join the crew because he's too powerful defensively? No. He can join the crew now. Will he join the crew? That's still debatable. I'm not sure if Balin will be able to join the crew, because we'd be back up to a pretty high count of characters. We'd have the 4 knights themselves. We haven't gotten Lance back. Presumably we're going to get him back after this arc in a short while, or maybe in a while. But assuming we stick with the amount of knights we have now, so we'll have 3 knights, because we're obviously going to get Tristan back at the end of the arc. Then we're going to have the rest of the Tristan platoon putting us at 6. Then we're going to have Anne, Donnie, and Nasians putting us at 9. I just realized something. I'll talk about that later. I hope I can remember that when I get to that point. But we're at 9. Then Gareth is a confirmed tag-along. That's the promise that Percy made to them. So that's 10. Dareth is a byproduct of Gareth. How active Dareth is going to be as a character is debatable, but, like, presumably we'll knock that up to 11. So Balin will be putting us at 12. And that's before we get Lance back on. Then we'll be back at 13. That's a big cast for Nakaba to write. Remember, he could barely write all sevendeadlysins when they were all in the same area. But with it being the case, I wouldn't be mad at it. If Nakaba wants to flex his writing chops, it'd be really cool to have Balin along. I love him. Once again, even with what this chapter does to him, even the way this chapter ends him, I still really, really like Balin. I still like Balin so good. But with it being the case, we see that Gawain is very happy with herself and says, "Yo-ho-ho, that it's time to surrender. Come on, say uncle for me, right now." And Balin is like, now wait a second. Just because you figured out my gimmick doesn't mean you got this dub. You better work for it. As she's shocked to see him stands up. And he says, "You don't want this to end on that boring a note, do you? Didn't you say you could defeat me with one finger?" And once again, I love, like, he's just so cool, right? He's not even mad that Gawain figured out the magic. And clearly he has some pride and some willingness to keep his magic to himself, as he never explained this to anybody else. But even in spite of being figured out, and even in spite of being ousted, he's genuinely impressed and respects Gawain enough to be like, "Hey, you said you were built like that. Let's finish this. Let's have a fight to the photo finish. I'm not just going to give up just because you figured me out. Let's do this." And that's respectable, man. He's cool. He's cool. Is he definitely just really kind of bad? But, like, yeah, he doesn't have any offensive magic. But still, he's really, really cool. I like it a whole lot. But with him standing up, we see Gawain go flat-faced and get pretty annoyed as she blazes and burns. But then she smiles. Very well, then. And notice remember how I said earlier that Gawain starts mogging people, or while we have the dinosaur and the puppet mewing? Well, Gawain, clearly she inherited the mewing from her parents. As she goes on to mock Balin in this very image. This is one of the best panels that Gawain has ever gotten. As we see, Gawain lunges and Balin swings, and they both clash swords. They intercept each other, they bounce off, once again showing relativity on Balin's end. Remember, he gets no sort of buffs to his physical stats. He's literally just swinging even with this very high tier Gawain. And we see Gawain fly high into the air to avoid Balin's strikes. Obviously, Balin himself can't fly, but he could jump up to reach her, but he doesn't do that in this instance. And Gawain begins to chant. And could I read the chant? Absolutely. Will I read the chant? No. Abgudiba, 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 abgudiba. And we see that Cabalini declares, with the secret of Balin's magic... I've been reading too much Issue of the Witch. With the secret of Balin's magic revealed, what move will Gawain try next? Which side will the goddess of victory smile upon? Oh, I wish it was my glorious, juicy, legendary, scrumptious, well-developed King Balin. But we see that both Tantris and Percy are locked in, thinking about the possibilities. She may know how it works, but either the magic or the melee blow will be blocked. Is there some decisive way to end this? Gawain might know it. But the funny thing is, both of these characters also violate Balin just by fighting normally. Remember, well before Percy, well, admittedly, he did figure it out, but it was like in the first 30-ish chapters. Percy always infuses his weapon with magic. And he has the Force Circular, which amps his already existing amp infusion and is a Sacred Treasure tier weapon. He violates Balin, no matter what. And Tristan also violates Balin because he also typically infuses his weapons with his magic, whether it be light or darkness. Obviously, darkness is kind of weird. Ignil, speaking of, Ignil, thank you so much for referencing all the different things. The one question I do have, though, does Alden count? Like, what? And this is a question for everyone, but Ignil is the one who brought it up and it made me think. Does Alden count as magic and physical infusion? Because Ignil is right. You do see Merlin infuse magic into Alden all the time. In fact, she's infused her own soul into it. But I still don't think Merlin could beat Balin because I don't think she has the physicals required. Because, once again, Balin does seem to have at least some sort of baseline durability beyond Invincible. And while Gawain will go on to literally flick him out at the end of this chapter, Gawain does have the physical stats to do something like that. But Merlin, I still think she loses. Just like I still think Elizabeth loses. Because he would just always cancel out the magic in that case. He would never switch to canceling out Fizz, because Fizz doesn't do anything. Right? Maybe I'm tweaking, though. But with it being the case, I may have to make Balin versus Elizabeth and Balin versus Merlin. But with it being the case, we see that Beltreat declares, Balin's strength is genuine. If anyone can defeat him, it could only be me. So essentially, this is Nakaba, like, speaking through Balin, or speaking through Beltreat, being like, hey, I know I just made Balin kind of fraudulent to a majority of the verse, considering a majority of the verse does infuse magic into their attacks, but I need y'all to hear me out, Balin, he's not fodder. He's not fodder, I promise you. That's essentially what Nakaba's saying here. He's having Beltreat at least acknowledge Balin's strength, and I think that is true, right? Like I've already made the argument for, I think Balin does have high tier stats, just by being able to damage Gawain, and even tank some of her flames, but still, you know, he's not the best, but he's not fodder. But we see that Beltreat, even in spite of this thought process, says, so why? Why is my mind so assured of that little girl's victory? And once again, I do wonder, Beltreat never mentioned the idea of feeling sunshine from Gawain again. Even when she summoned back Rita, I thought he was going to make a comment on that, but no. The only thing he says here is he's so assured of that little girl's victory. Which, once again, may be a reference to the fact that she's Escanor's daughter. And with her being Escanor's daughter, maybe he's still feeling that, like, sense of certain victory that Escanor always seemed to carry about him with the power of sunshine. But we see as Gawain charges up this massive attack, she keeps on chanting. And notably, we cut back to the other group. Specifically, the parents, as they say, you want to tell her the truth? Oh no, this is Dubs speaking. You want to tell her the truth? It is the duty of any parent, is it not, Dubs? I wouldn't really know. You know, I am a deadbeat father. You know, I lay pipe all around. I've gotten many giants. 9 months, that's how you humans do pregnancies. Our giant lifespan, it's 90 years. And I've laid pipe all over the place, but I've never actually bothered to be a father. I'm kidding. Am I? Why do I feel like Dubs is laid pipe? I feel like Dubs is like a super plumber. He's real good with his hands, eh? Dubs is definitely... Dubs being a deadbeat father, entirely possible. Entirely possible. But with it being the case, he admits, I wouldn't really know. Once again, he probably doesn't have kids. He may have never laid pipe. Once again, he seems mostly interested in his own things. But you never know. Now they say, when they're short, all those inches gotta go somewhere. I'm sorry, I couldn't even say it. And like, how that made... Like, remember, he's very small for a giant. But with being the case, we see that And the people here, the parents say, oh, how do I do... I need to, like, figure out how to do an older gentleman's voice. Oh, well, I'm not sure how I could do it. For that matter, would she believe us when we look like this? When we look like this. She would be so disappointed in us. And herself, too. Now, I understand her being disappointed in them, because essentially they've been lying to her for years by having her call them grandma and grandpa. But, like, why would she be disappointed in herself? Is it because she didn't figure it out? But, like, obviously she wouldn't figure it out. She wouldn't think she popped out of a wooden puppet and a dragon head. But we see, the case says, well, that's up to Gawain that's up to Gawain herself to decide, isn't it? As her foster father, I can tell you one thing. Escanor, Merlin, she's just as strong as the both of you. Okay. So, let's do it. I've been building it. I've been kind of honest how I feel about it throughout the review, and I gave myself a little bit. I literally gave myself 10 minutes and kind of just like. Typically, to like break them out a little bit, whenever I record, and like today I was doing a bit of a bulk recording session. Today I recorded so far, and I do plan to do a little bit more recording after this review as well. I recorded Boruto, which dropped today. I recorded Chainsaw Man, which dropped today. I recorded Kagurabachi, which dropped on Sunday. And I do still need to catch up on Dan. I'm 2 chapters behind on that, so I'm planning to record that after this. And I'm currently recording 4 nights. But in between, I'll grab a drink of water. I try not to drink on camera too much anymore because I have to mute the mic. I'm muted because of a whole bunch of mess. So I don't really drink too much on camera anymore, but I grab water in between. And I only just sat here in my chair for like 10 minutes being like, how do I feel about this? Because this is just the reveal. Merlin and Escanor created Gawain. And like, here's the thing about this in a macro narrative sense. It was obvious that Gawain was the child of Merlin and Escanor. Mage with sun powers. Literally wearing the fusion of their outfit. Like no duh. That just made sense. But I think the thing that bothers me is that Escanor is alive. Before, I was more fine with the homunculus idea. And that could still be the case, don't get me wrong. That's the thing. I'll need, like, obviously, Gawain and Escanor being the parents, big reveal, crazy, cool. But I need this confirmed on whether or not Gawain is quite literally their child, as in Escanor has a proper physical form, and Merlin has a proper physical form, and Escanor piped down Merlin and then made Gawain, and then they just decided they didn't want to tell her that for reasons, I guess. But maybe it's because Merlin had to go into hiding after that, and obviously Chaos King Arthur would have been happy with Escanor being alive and laying pipe in his own realm. But before, I was like, okay, Merlin got some of the DNA of Escanor, captured the sunshine grace, modified it so it wouldn't kill the person she created, and then created Gawain, and like a test tube. That's why Gawain doesn't understand what kind of birth she had, or her background, doesn't know who her parents are, because she doesn't really have parents. She was like, I'm not sure how much I can say without getting this video demonetized, but like, some people go and choose which eggs they want, and choose which seed they want, and they mix them together, and bada bing, bada boom. That's how Gawain was made. That's how I thought. She's like, running a test tube. But this seems to imply that Escanor is alive and laid pipe. And the reason I don't like it is that I liked the ending of Escanor, very specifically him ending in death. And notably, the only reason I'm not tweaking and backflipping and being over the moon is because I actually did like the fact that Escanor died. Like, the whole thing about Escanor's death, in some sense, is that it was a series that was consistently avoiding death. Like, just over and over and over again, it was avoiding death. Like, the only major characters to die and stay dead in Seven Deadly Sins is Escanor. I'm talking major characters. There are characters like Fraudrin who die and stay dead, and like they're random fodder, like demons and stuff like that. And as far as we know, what's his name? The main villain of Bridge of Edinburgh, he's dead. Deathpierce, like he's dead. And the Demon King and the Supreme Deity, but like major antagonists. But out of like main characters on the good guy side, it was only Escanor. Every other character got revived in some way, shape, or form. Everyone had their happy ending, but Escanor didn't. And there was a sort of beautiful, dramatic irony about that. But with it being revealed that Escanor is alive in some way, shape, or form to create Gawain, it's kind of, it doesn't negate Escanor's sacrifice at the end of Seven Deadly Sins, but it does sour the moment, right? Like, it's the Kingdom Hearts 3 came out 6 years ago. It's too late. It's the whole idea of the resurrection of Naminé, Xion, and Roxas in Kingdom Hearts 3. does their resurrection and their happy ending erase the fact that they went through Kingdom Hearts 2 in 358 Days Over 2 and Chain of Memories? It doesn't. But now, whenever I play through those games or try to re-experience their stories, I always have this lingering thought in the back of my mind that, oh, they're going to be fine. It doesn't really matter. They lived anyway. And that's the same thing I feel here. I love Escanor's sacrifice at the end. I love that he goes out in a tragic way. I love that he's the only one to not really get a happy ending right next to Merlin, which leads into this state that Four Knights is in. But now knowing that Merlin did get Escanor, and Escanor was alive, and got to lay pipe with Merlin, like it feels like Nakama didn't have the nerve to stick to it. And I don't like that. I don't like that. But at the same time, there's context that's missing. And that's what we'll see this revealed in the long run for me. It'll be one thing if Escanor is actually truly dead, and Merlin just did the same she did with Alden. Remember, when Merlin's body was petrified by Galen's commandment, because, Nakama forgot, or didn't create the idea that Merlin was immune to the commandments, so he let her get petrified. When that happened, Merlin transferred her soul into Alden. So maybe she did a soul transfer, right? She captured Escanor's soul, brought it back from the capital of the dead, and put it into this body. Or some functioning body that she made, and then bada bing, bada boom, they laid pipe, and then bam, gawain. And that's fine, but still, I don't like the idea of Escanor being alive, man. And I just don't like it in any way, shape, or form. I'm not the biggest fan of it. But that's me. And I do get, notably, in spite of, I just don't like Escanor being alive in any way, shape, or form, but Merlin being here is fine. And also, it's the perfect place to hide from him. Remember, she's trying to hide from Arthur right now. Arthur's still looking for her, trying to replace her. Or failing to replace her. So her hiding in a wooden doll form, as we've seen her transfer her soul to other non-living objects previously, does make sense. It's a good way to hide. And by living in Camelot, she's hiding right under Arthur's nose. He would look everywhere for her, except for Camelot, and probably especially except for directly under Kay. Right? So, it makes perfect sense that she'd do that. But the other thing I did want to mention earlier, and I did remember it, so be proud of me. My bad memory did kick in here. Or my good memory overrode my bad memory here. This is now the case that every single one of the Seven Deadly Sins duos has a rep for the Four Knights, except for King and Diane. Except for King and Diane, because we have Tristan representing Meliodas and Elizabeth. We have Gawain representing Escanor and Merlin now. And we have Lance representing Bon and Elaine. But notably, Gother can't have kids because he's a puppet. And King and Diane, I guess the least most important members of the Seven Deadly Sins, they don't even get a rep. Obviously, they have their pseudo rep, the secret fifth knight, if you will, the current fifth strongest character out of our main cast. Oh, unless Balin joins. Unless Balin joins. But the fifth strongest member of our main cast, Nasins, that's their rep. But it does feel mad disrespectful that the Four Knights did their legacy, the Seven Deadly Sins legacy, one of their kids wasn't included in that. I get it. I'd prefer Percy over Nasins as one of the Four Knights, and I do like Percy a whole lot as a character, so I'm fine with that. And I'm fine to have at least one non-legacy character be the main character, because I think just having Tristan be the main character, I think Nakama made the right choice of switching out Tristan at the last second for being the main character and turning it into Percy. I think that's a much more interesting plot than what we would have had prior. But man, I feel bad for King and Diane. They get beat up and tossed around and abused by the original narrative, and they get beat up, tossed around, and abused in their legacy in the sequel narrative. But Escanor and Merlin are alive just fine, and Gawain's parents. What do y'all think about it? I don't like it. I don't like it because of Escanor being alive in some way, shape, or form. But that's it. That's it. Outside of that, I already expected this. No one's really... I think no one is probably going to be surprised by the fact that she is that. If you had a functioning pair of eyeballs, you knew that she had some ties to Escanor and Merlin. I think being the direct child of them is a little bit much. I don't know. I still don't really like that. But with it being the case, we see that she uses Exterminate Maximum Ray. Fires a massive beam down. We see Balin say, forget it. Obviously, he's going to block with his magic here. But Gawain, showing an evolution in her abilities here, unless the earlier chanting, and someone who knows the chants better than I do, may be able to recognize the teleportation chant in this long chant she does for Maximum Exterminate Ray. But she teleports right in front of him, pulls back her fingers, and flicks his forehead hard enough to immediately knock him out. And she teleports out of the way. So this is actually kind of a crazy movement speed feat, or at least reaction speed feat, and even combat speed, because she does get the flick off. Because look at how far the exterminate ray travels. It's like only a ball away from him. She teleports directly in front of him, flicks him, smiles, and then teleports out. All before her own beam can even reach him. So she is able to blitz her own attacks with teleportation and fight before her attack can reach somebody. And then we see that since his magic guard was up, not his physical guard, which really sucks. It's not an automatic thing. He does have to actually choose which guard he puts up. It's like I mentioned earlier, I mentioned last week, in fact, I think I made the whole mirror coat and counter analogy. He needs to pick one to either mirror coat or counter. And he was choosing magic because of the ray. He fell for the bait. She teleported in, flicked him, knocked him out. As he says, if she teleported in and flicked me on the forehead, oh no, I'm losing it. And since he is passing out, he says, all that power, it's such a cheat. And then he gets blasted by the full power exterminate ray while he's knocked out, immediately beasting on him and violating him. And we see Beltrep is shocked, and the whole audience is blown back. And oh, this is so adorable. I didn't even notice this in the live reaction. Well, Donnie gets blown up and looks mad and embarrassing, and Nazians hold each other. Oh, that's so cute. Oh, that's so cute, man. Oh, actually, no. Who's that? Is that Boris? That may have been Boris that got knocked up here, or just a random. But Anne and Nazians hold each other. I know, like, Anne is main girl, and like Nazians is gonna have an unrequited love story, but I do love this duo. They are one of my favorite pairs outside of the many knight duos. But with it being the case, we see Donnie, Gareth, who's absolutely blown away, Hauser and Pelio all shocked, and we see Tantris and Percy both being like, oh, did you see that? Wow! With that teleport and devastating flick, she didn't even give him she didn't even, stop, slow down. She didn't even give him the time to switch what he cancels. And the moment he passed out and Invincible was stopped, she immediately gave him that huge magic strike. So she timed it perfectly and defeated Balin. Though once again, look, obviously Gawain was likely holding back a little bit, but Balin did survive this. And didn't even, like, his skin wasn't even burned off. He was just burned. So he did actually tank the maximum exterminate ray while knocked out. So once again, Balin is not fodder. He's not fodder. He's just on the top tier. He's just a high tier at best, and below Archangel level, I do believe. But with it being the case, Gawain lands back in small form and says, phew, are you happy now? And she says, just like I promised, I knocked you out with one finger. And that she did. She did, in fact, knock him out with one finger. She just finished the job with the exterminate ray. And she see her raise her finger to the sky, just like the famous Escanor panel, or Escanor cover. And Captain declares, Balin is fully unconscious. Match 3, a block B in the round 2 goes to Gawain. And she says, I'm so the best. She's going to lose to Tristan. She's going to lose to Tristan. But with it being the case, W chapter. Like I said, I'm not going to override everything else I like about this chapter just because I don't like Escanor being alive. That's a me thing. That's a me thing. I know a bunch of other Escanor fans are probably like clicking their heels and doing backflips and jumping through the moon. Like, I know a lot of people who just had this theory in mind are happy that it was confirmed. Once again, man, I don't know. I really like the idea of Escanor having, like, there being a cost to defeating the Demon King. There being a cost to breaking the cycle of 3,000 years of suffering and torment. There being a cost to something like that. But no, Escanor's just fine. And he got with Merlin. And they had a happy ever after. And they laid pipe. And they made away. So, I just don't like that. But everything else this chapter does is straight gas. I do like nerfing Balin enough that he could possibly join the main crew. I like the elaboration and confirmation of the weakness of Invincible. I like the characterization of Dubs and Kay. I like the Hawk references. I like Gawain and her fighting style and her choice here. Her properly using her buffness and her magical ability all at once. Proving her as a true mixed attacker. I like her tactical ability. And even if it is a little bit pathetic for Balin to go out to a finger forehead flick, it still is perfect, and it does wrap up what she promised, perfectly closing off the fight. Shout out to everyone who did have faith in Gawain. Overall, a W chapter. If you made it all the way to this video, please leave. Welcome back, Pride. Welcome back, Pride, in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to hit the notification so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below, where you can support me for as low as 1, get them on, double, things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. So now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks include the live reactions here this season I have to review, every variations of all my videos, and if you become a $25 patron or a $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, the link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below. You can drop 5 minutes to a short video, to any beans on video, or any beans at all. Any support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off.
I'd like to thank you to our sketch tier members: Eternal Flame, Rebel 4765, Astro, Super Flame Zero, Glacier XZ, Zara, Brandon Payne, J2MA, Gyomi, Yuki Ally, Buddha Uda, Azo2404, Planet Crone, G Prosper, Nevis 97, and Ollie. I'd like to give a big old thank you to our line art tier patrons: Sean, Nirvana Igneal, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin Encarnacion, and A+A. And I'd like to give a big old thank you to our Inc. tier members: Fine, Austin Wimberly, Euchia, Carlo Alaimo, and Grim. And then I'd like to give a big old hefty thank you to our digital art tier members: Jay Warrior and AZ Void. And then I'd like to give a big old thank you to our colored art tier patrons: Waki Munoz and Waki Munoz. And then I'd finally like to give a giga super duper kidney sacrificing thank you to our ultimate, that guy with a heart on the horizon, Calvin Elder.